When the deputies zip-tied my wrists on the sun-bleached boards of my own dock, I remember thinking, well, isn't this just poetic? A land surveyor getting arrested on the land his grandfather bled over. I didn't shout, didn't panic, didn't even bother to plead. Just kept my ear tuned to the strange little symphony playing out behind me. Karen Briggs, Queen Bee of Blue Harbor, murmuring sweet nothings to two teenagers she'd handpicked to look traumatized for the occasion. The sheriff thumbed through my ID on his tablet with the sort of bored frown you'd expect from a man who'd rather be doing anything else. Meanwhile, the lake just kept slapping gently against a pontoon boat, one that didn't belong there, tied up on my dock like some unwanted house guest. Face pressed sideways against the rough grain of the wood, breathing in heat and humiliation, it hit me. This wasn't the kind of war you fought with fists or fences. No, this was a war of perception, lies, and that infuriating smugness you only get from people who think the world bends around their idea of authority. And if there's one universal truth in these battles, it's that the first casualty is always the truth. I'm Milo Avery, 38, and for most of my life, I was the guy with a GPS and a clipboard mapping rivers and boundaries for the Department of the Interior. I've measured rivers down to the inch, flagged floodplains, crawled under dam spillways to check if a bolt could hold back 100,000 tons of angry water. Bureaucracy never scared me, and neither did a storm. But nothing in 20 years of government work prepared me for a woman like Karen Briggs. Karen's the HOA president over at Blue Harbor, a cluster of vinyl-sided houses and manicured lawns that sprouted up decades after my grandfather built Pine Hollow Lake. Their world is all lawnmowers, HOA newsletters, and block parties. Mine is 30 acres of pine forest, loamy silence, and a shoreline I always thought I'd be left alone to enjoy. For the first month, I felt like I could finally breathe again after holding it for years. But peace is a temporary thing, isn't it? The trouble started with footsteps. Kids started cutting through the underbrush, laughing, dropping soda cans in the mud, dragging little kayaks through the grass like they owned the place. I tried to keep it friendly, told them, hey, this is private property. You probably didn't know. They shrugged. Our parents come here all the time, one of them said, not a flicker of embarrassment. That should have been my warning shot. Soon after, it was tense by the fire pit, folding chairs on my lawn, strangers grilling next to my old stone smoker. I'd find a stranger's canoe tied up to my dock, like I was running a lakeside campground. The day I found a couple stringing fairy lights up in my grandfather's old gazebo, well, let's just say I started to see red. I walked up, tried to keep my cool, introduced myself, and asked politely who told them they could use this space. The association, they answered, pointing across the lake. That's the first time I heard the name Karen. But I didn't actually meet her until the morning I stepped out, coffee in hand, and saw a full-blown party happening on my dock. Kids cannonballing off the pier, a man grilling burgers next to my solar shed. And there, sitting in my Adirondack chair like she'd always belonged, was Karen Briggs. Big sunglasses, sun hat, the kind of smile you give a stray dog sniffing around your yard. You must be Milo, she said, like she was greeting a long-lost nephew at a family reunion. I'm Karen Briggs, Blue Harbor HOA president. I own my ground. This is private property, ma'am. She tilted her head, all condescension and charm. Sweetie, you can't own a lake. It touches our lots, too. It's always been community space. She actually gestured around, like she was showing off her kingdom. We've held gatherings here for years. I asked if she'd ever bothered to get permission. She just blinked at me. No one stopped us. That's it. That's her whole worldview in one sentence. If nobody stops me, it must be allowed. I told her the party needed to pack up. She leaned in, just enough to let me smell her wine, and whispered, "You're making this harder than it needs to be. The sheriff will clear it up. You know that tone? The one people use when they think the law follows their social calendar?" It crawled right under my skin. And sure enough, the next weekend, they didn't just come back. They doubled down. There were 30 people, a full DJ booth under my pines, HOA banners snapping in the breeze. Some guy ran an orange extension cord right across my grass and started siphoning my electricity. When I told him to unplug, he looked at me like I was the trespasser and flipped me off. I walked back inside, shut the blinds, and dialed the sheriff. That's when Karen went full suburban drama. Called 911, played the scared mother card, told dispatch I was armed and unstable and threatening the community's children. So that's how I wound up zip-tied on my own dock, a bunch of strangers gawking from my shoreline. But the deputies figured it out soon enough. Once they saw my deed, the Army Corps maps, the paperwork stacked half a foot thick. Once they realized who actually owned the land, their faces went from stern to sheepish. One deputy muttered an apology as he cut me loose. Karen, not missing a beat, told the officers, "I'm just glad this ended peacefully. He's been so tense." Tense? Lady, you have no idea. I didn't argue. Didn't give her the satisfaction. Just watched her herd her followers away, sipping her cheap wine like she'd just want to poke her hand. That night, I locked my door and pulled out every document my grandfather ever filed, every survey map, every dusty folder in the old safe. And I prepared for war. Turns out, my case was bulletproof. Pine Hollow Lake wasn't some naturally occurring pond. It was engineered from scratch, dug, dammed, and filled on land that's been in my family since before Blue Harbor existed. The water rights, the dam, the shoreline. Every line on every map pointed straight to sole ownership. There were no public easements, no shared rights, no historic use. Which meant every single HOA party, trail, or kayak on my side of the lake was trespass, plain and simple. But Karen? She's clever. I'll give her that. A week later, I discovered she'd filed an updated HOA map with the county. Not a real one, a doctored map with a faint dotted line tracing right up to my shore. It wasn't legally binding, but it was just enough to make her neighbors believe the eastern edge was up for grabs. And wouldn't you know it, within days, I caught a landscaping crew carving a public trail straight through my property. 4 feet wide, crushed gravel, those fake wooden posts, and a shiny new sign. Public lake access, established 1999. I didn't yell, I filmed. Every inch. That's when Karen reappeared, arms folded, smiling sweet as poison. Restoring historical paths, she said. Making it ADA friendly. Historical my ass. But here's the thing. Arguments don't win wars. Evidence does. So I installed cameras, motion activated, tucked inside birdhouses, mapped out geofence alerts on my phone. Over the next week, I caught 20 different HOA members strolling through like they bought tickets. One dragged a kayak. Another let their dog do its business next to my generator shed. The highlight reel was Karen herself, leading a couple on a lakeside tour, pointing across the water. This area used to be ours. The current owner just doesn't respect community history. Community history? She said it like it was the Constitution. But Karen wasn't done. She went public. Newspaper interviews, Facebook posts, little campaigns painting me as the villainous hermit hoarding nature's lake. Protesters started showing up, signs reading, "Let the people swim," and "No more lake lords." Some guy in a beaver suit chanting, "You don't own water." I kept quiet, just kept collecting evidence, biding my time. Then I called in the only person I trusted, Julie Ricks, local journalist, truth magnet. Julie filmed every inch of my property, every document, every phony sign. When she dropped her video online, it exploded, hundreds of thousands of views, comment sections full of fury, memes of Karen claiming historical access, while dramatic violin music played in the background. Even TikTok jumped in. That's when things started to crack. Karen's GoFundMe for legal defense got flagged and pulled. She rage quit a live stream. County environmental officials dropped a letter about illegal trail construction. And after years of these disputes, you learn, whoever goes silent first usually loses next. That's when Alex, my attorney, went to work. Filed every complaint you can think of, county, state, environmental, civil. We hit them with trespassing, false emergency reports, property damage, defamation, even fraudulent county filings. Court wasn't dramatic. It was surgical. Karen's lawyer waved community tradition like a magic wand, but Alex buried them in time-stamped aerial photos, county records, Army Corps letters, in a greatest hits reel of Karen on camera, admitting the lake wasn't hers, but insisting we should just share. When Karen finally took the stand, dressed head to toe in blinding white, I watched her confidence evaporate with every exhibit Alex put up, photo after photo, video after video, every lie caught in the act. The verdict didn't come with fireworks. It came with surgical precision, full judgment in my favor. Nearly 900 grand in damages, environmental fines, HOA forced to retract every public claim, and Karen? Banned from serving on any HOA board for 3 years, forbidden from even stepping on my shoreline. Permanent injunction, case closed, lake sealed off for good. Karen walked out of that courtroom without meeting my eye, her shoulders hunched and fragile, like she'd aged a decade in a day. The so-called queen of Blue Harbor, dethroned by a pile of old deeds and a mountain of stubbornness. Back home, the illegal trail disappeared within days, swallowed by pine needles and time. The lake breathed again, quiet, wide, untamed. A few neighbors apologized, most just avoided me. Honestly, didn't matter. I wasn't fighting for their approval. I was fighting for the line, a line my grandfather drew in the mud, the water, and the law. A line that said stewardship matters more than entitlement. That evening, as the wind rustled through the pines and the water went still, I realized winning doesn't always roar. Sometimes, victory is the quiet after all the noise dies down, the stillness after the storm, the simple, unglamorous truth holding its ground. And in the world of HOA wars, that's the only kind of victory that means anything. So, let me ask you, where do you draw the line? Is it about the rules, the land, the history, or is it about something deeper, something you can't measure on a survey map? Drop your story below. Tell me, do you think justice was served, or is there more to the story? And if you've ever had to fight for what's yours, I want to hear how you stood your ground.